Hey, we're back for part 3 of our round around with like diameters. So we've been working with 3-inch tube. So we've got our branch developed. We're ready to do the header. And so the way we begin that is I'm just going to blank out the rectangular size of the header, and I'm just going to do it below it, kind of in, so it's kind of orthographically projected from kind of where I've drawn the header. So I'm just going to use polyline, and I'm just going to draw it in below here. So this way I know that it's kind of the length that which was an arbitrary length we determined, but we did this as a 5-inch long header, and we put our branch kind of center line of that. So just our header length is bigger than our branch so that we can kind of fit our branch and get the development out of it. But this header length, doesn't have to be that big. This existing pipe could be really long, and that's fine. We're just doing kind of a pattern to fit into a particular area, or we're making a T that will fit into an area and then we'll pipe to it or something. So if we need a 6-inch long header, that's fine, or whatever it is. Just the one we've chose to start with here was 5 inches long, and so that's just 5. And then it's going to be as long as in this way. I'm just thinking of this header kind of laid out flat. So this is going to be the circumference of a 3-inch OD tube, same as our branch was, which I think we determined was, well, I didn't pull that up. So in case that I wonder that, once you've done the work, and I really haven't dimensioned anything, and maybe I'll just take just a second to show this up on screen here that, oh, you know what else I didn't do in that last video? Is I never did make sure that all my ends were make sure they were all joined up together, because I never did make do a polyline edit on this thing. And it looks like my points all lined up point to point, so I've got a continuous pattern here. I was just checking that real quick while I was over here, but should have done that in the last video, but that's fine. This shows my stretch out at 9.4248, which is what I want down there on the header. I just wanted to kind of snap that to that, and I guess I could dimension this too for our own checks. Before you get too far in your drawing, you should do some dimension checks. Even though I'm right at the end here, that was a 3-inch diameter header. That's a 3-inch long branch from the 12 o'clock point, and here's that final dimension that I just pulled up again. Is a 5-inch long header. So now, sometimes I like to have some dimensions there on screen to work with in case I forget what it is, especially the stretch out. So I was just laying out the header stretch out and needed to know that same figure since they're the same diameters, 9.4248. So I can come back down here and finish my pattern. So it's 5 inches long. It's 9.4248. Is that what I said? I'm just going to check 4248. Yeah, that's great. So same width here, and then just blank out this rectangle. So all that represents is this header stretched out flat. So it just becomes a rectangle, and it should have a hole cut in it if it needed to be a pass-through type of fitting, which is what I'm showing you here. So I like to know the center line of this. So maybe I can just use, I know we use kind of a yellow a lot for center lines. So this will have this particular line will have a midpoint in it, and I will go ahead and snap in a center line on that. So just divided my pattern in half there. So I can have this center line be, I could clock this thing any way I wanted to clock it, right? Like the center of my pattern could be at 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock, or at noon or at 6 o'clock. So you know, I could pick kind of any quadrant of the header to start my pattern. So I think I'll show you the way I'm going to develop this is these are going to kind of, if this thing rolls back up again, there'll be kind of weld seams there if it was apart. It doesn't really matter if it's paper, but I'm gonna treat this line that I just did as 12 o'clock in this picture here. So it's gonna be like top dead center in that right side view. And that'll mean my branch is gonna come right in here, and this the outside or the ends of my pattern here would kind of represent this line in this front view. It'd kind of be that 6 o'clock position here, like 180 degrees from the branch. That's going to be kind of where my header seam is. And like I said, it could be anyway, but I'm just going to show you that. It's going to put my branch cut out kind of like dead center of this pattern here. So what we need to do this is we need some information from both of these views. So if I said that this is like 12 o'clock, the first thing I need to pick up is these orientation lines. And what I need to know is if I'm starting at 12 o'clock, I need to know like where my next set of orientation lines are. So to do that, it's it's going to be kind of around the round part of the header. So it's going to be kind of from like 7 to 6 here, or from 7 to 8 here, which actually end up be the same distance. You know, as these orientation lines come down, we realize that in this view they are the same spacing, but when we kind of look at them in this view, they are not the same spacing, right? Because this pipe is kind of going away from us, so the spacings kind of change. So that means like from 7 to 6, and then from 6 to 5. When I look in this view, these aren't the same spacings as they would be if the circle was just. Well, it's kind of funny that it actually is, I guess, in this picture. Let me see. Looks, or 7. That's actually just making me think a little bit. But what I like to do, and then we'll check that. But I like to load when I do. I'm going to do some other reference lines, some other reference circles here. So I'm actually going to load I load a dot, like a really fine pattern dot. And so I'm going to say OK on that. And I have this as a line type, this really tight dot pattern. And then I'm going to go with some new colors that I haven't really used in my drawing. So I'll start maybe with a magenta colored line. And I'm going to use a circle. What I'm looking to do is kind of pick up this distance around this pattern here. So from there to there, it's kind of like I want this radius. And I've just kind of snapped that, which is going to be the same as this pattern because we're a symmetrical part. So as I head towards kind of that quarter mark on this side or this side, this circle kind of picks up both those points. And then I need another circle to pick up from there to there. And I don't think it's not going to be this one. I can check my own. If it's going to be the same, it does on this part. That's and that does make sense to me because you know this circle right here is the same as looking at the header diameter. So really for these, and it would be the same right here. Like these radiuses all become the same. So the spacings on this all are the same. And that will change if the diameter changes. I guess that's where I'm almost questioning myself. But if this diameter is smaller than the bottom header, if I have a branch and header different sizes, then these spacings change. And I have to show that change down there when I make this header. But for this actual part, all I need is, you know, stepping off where that branch. So it's kind of like 6 spacings of like there to there to there would be the center, and then back this way. So I need to lay that out on my, it takes up half my pattern, which would make sense to me too. You know, that branch and the hole cut forward is going to take up half of the circumference of the header. So anyway, so one of those patterns picks up this. That's what I've made them all the same color. If you'll see as I do other developments, I'll change those colors when those spacings change. So for this one, we can copy one of these lines here by its center point, and I just want that radius. Another note here is that as I use, and this is how I would use a compass out in the field, if I was drawing this off of paper, is I would just set my, that's how I would set my compass to this radius to kind of pick up this spacing down below to put it on a pattern, which ends up being, if I like, you can see the difference when I hold this, the radius is actually just like a chord of the of that circumference. So it isn't actually a true measurement. There is a slight error in that, being that I'm using a radius from that point to that point as kind of the space between those two orientation lines. But in reality, you can see there my little yellow line shows that's kind of what that's kind of the value I'm going to take down below. But in reality, it's actually the arc that is the part of the header there that follows the true circumference. So I get there's a little bit of an error here as I do this kind of manipulation, which was always done when layout guys used pencils, compasses, and paper to do this. This is just, it would speed up the process. You know, I assume what I could go down here and do is I could divide this thing with equal spacings, and then have a true spot to put the information I'm going to get. But we're going to do this in other drawings, so I just thought I would do it here too. Is that I'm just going to, that's kind of planting that radius distance on my header pattern, and then it's really just a matter of like counting, like how many of those do I need to be the end of my branch here. Is like 1, 2, 3 of those patterns will put me kind of where the branch finishes and terminates on the header there. So what I'm looking for is like 3 radiuses. So that's kind of like 1 radius, and then if I snap another one right here, that's like 1, 2 radiuses, and the third snap would put 3 radiuses of information, 1, 2, 3, and that's kind of where the end of my branch pattern should be. And just kind of a quick way to do that, you know. And it's the same on the other. It's the same on like. It's the same on this side because that branch is symmetrical, and so it's just like there's 1 radius, 2, and the third one there. So, and it's the same on this side of the pattern too. I'm looking for the same spacing. Although in AutoCAD, it's easy for me just to like, and it would be with a drawing board. I can just set my parallel or set my T square against the side of my board and draw these lines across my header. Which is what I'm going to do here, is just like show those lines, except for I'll show you the next thing I'm going to do. So I've just picked up the spacing on the header that the branch takes up. And now what I need to know is, like, where does that branch start this way now? Kind of across this, you know, I've just kind of determined where it takes up along this kind of y-axis here in our drawing. Now I need to determine where it lies in kind of the x-plane here. And that's when I use this information right here in this front view is, and I'll show you. One reason why I might use like different colors to do this is it helps to see they are different color lines here, or they are these are different length lines here, in that if I take and make this one a magenta color line, I'm trying to do this for clarity's sakes here, but what I'm saying here is I'm looking for this distance from the end of the header to where that branch kind of starts there, like that. And I just kind of drew a magenta colored line there. And yeah, so if anything helped to like keep the pattern clear, it might be that I change some colors of my circles and use the magenta colored circle to say that's the distance from here on the header to there, and that's the length of line that goes with it. Yeah, any number of ways. I kind of think of color patterns to kind of try to help me show to you what matches with what. So maybe it's like the next set of circles I could choose to make a different color, which is this one. And maybe I'll just make it like a dark blue. And then I'll go to that dark blue color, but that second set of circles would be like the second set of circles here. Like this set and this set would be kind of blue here. Right? And then what I think about when I think of this is that this blue circle is like picking up down to this point here. And so like I might make this line like my dark blue line. Yeah. And the fact is I kind of like these to be like reference maybe lines. They kind of show up better than those dots. I use those dots for my circles, but I just made those into a dash line. I can see them a little better. So, and then I would just want to change maybe the color of this. Even though they are picking up the same spacing, they're picking up different length lines here, and that's why I'm separating that difference there. So let's pick up like a light blue. I'm going to change that one, and so then I just want to change the last circles that I put down here. And remember, my color pattern doesn't have to be the same as yours, but all right. And then the last thing I want to do is draw this line so that light blue circle kind of picks up the information down to here, which is really the same, all the same there, but it does pick up a different length of line to where my branch starts there. Awesome. The only thing I really haven't defined is where I kind of started, the center point of that magenta colored circle. I'll just call it white. So all I really need to do is just pick up a white line that is kind of this the very top of my pattern here to where the branch starts, because it's kind of just the way I've divided my circle. There ends up being this 4 lines of information that tell me from the end of a header over to where the branch pattern starts, or these lengths are associated with it. So so now bear with me a little bit here, but I'm ready to take this information and put it down here on my header line. So I told you I was going to put my yellow line of center line. I'm actually going to choose and say that is my 12 o'clock line, which over my right side view is a white line. So I actually copy this from the end of the header, and that is where I kind of started taking information from, right there. So it's going to actually sit right on top of that yellow center line, but it's only that little short length of a line right there. That's actually right there has now defined this point. That little point is where that branch starts in the header. So I'm going to take the next line, which is this one, and copy it by the end of the header, right? And it's where that magenta circle ended there, right there. So that magenta radius of that circle helped us establish where to drop that line for there and there. All right. And now I'm ready to pick up, I got my blue circle on here, which is where the dark blue line should go. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy that by the end of the header and where the end of my dark blue circle is. And now I pick up the last line of information. Ends up being light blue, the end of the header. And really that's like, if you kind of analyze that, that line is really half, it's probably 2.5 inch long line, because that's a 5-inch header. That thing hits right in the center point, so that ends up being the center of my pattern here, but I need this one down over here. So then I get this. I've just only defined like half the pattern because I've just pulled the information over here. This has the same information. It's just I never brought those across. So, and I don't really need them because I've got them here. If I was using a compass, I would like set my point down here and make that little tick mark, and then I would have maybe drawn these lines all the way across first, and then kind of like set my compass down and marked on those lines, and it would have made these shapes on that side too. So I'm just going to use a quick AutoCAD command here, and I'm just going to mirror this. So I'm going to mirror, I want these lines over on the other side of the, not the yellow line, but that one, the little white line that sits on top. I want these lines over on the other side of the pattern, so I just say, hey, I want to mirror those by like a center point here, and just kind of pull them around and snap them in. Easy enough. Erase source object? No. Okay. So there we go. I just like establish them over there, but I would do that, with a drawing board with lines and a compass. I'd actually establish those little points on those lines that I would have maybe drawn across, and then I would have this like football shape that I just kind of quickly did on AutoCAD there. So last things I want to do here is just draw in that cutout using my polyline command. And if I think about how I kind of did it over there, is maybe I'll start here and arc and second point. I want to try to pick up the ends of that little white line. And I'm going to second point here to see if I can get from there to, by having these two different length lines, it kind of gives me that little center point there. Perfect. Yeah. I could have like drawn that in over here, and then when I mirrored that across, I could have had it too. So, I mean, there's, no problem doing it however you feel like is easier for you. All right. And the last thing is just fit into the bottom here, which should have a center point there. And should snap in. That should just look pretty symmetrical though. So it just looks like a football shape in this. That as that thing runs, as that thing like gets rolled up around, it would accept that branch to fit down in there with our points on our branch to fit down in there, and the high part of our branch would fit in there. So yeah, that's a done deal. The only thing I would really do to make sure my points were lining up is maybe choose one of these to make a polyline edit and join it. See if all that copying and pasting, if it becomes one shape. It does. Yeah, this, if I needed to make this a true cut file, I'd want to join it with these. And so I've got those joined up and that, and these blue lines kind of end up being like quarter lines for my quarter marks or quadrants for that header and that. Yeah, so that ends up being my template. If I just like copy this part out, this and this, and maybe I would take a center line and Copy that by that. This gets to be my finished pattern. The only thing that has in it that bugs me is the center line that goes across to actually cut out. So it looks like that. All right. That ends up finishing our round-to-round intersecting pipe, 3-inch OD tube for header and branch size. And this finished part was circumference of a 3-inch OD tube, and we made our header length 5 inches long. So there we go. That concludes that part. And next drawing will be round to round with a smaller diameter branch. So stay tuned for that one. That'll be the next one's our class assignment. I think we're on to our 5th one. So thanks.